Welcome back to our BCBA exam prep series. I'm Katherine Kellogg, and this week we are on week 13, starting a new topic. So we have wrapped up B, concepts and principles, and now we are moving into C, measurement, data display, and interpretation. We are going to start off by talking about FBA's, functional behavior assessments, and some of the advantages and disadvantages, and then we'll have a few practice questions at the end. Part one is going to talk about indirect assessment methods. Indirect assessment involves gathering information without directly observing the behavior. So it's very important that we gather as much as we can from caregivers, parents, family, teachers, other staff that's worked with our client before, so we can get an understanding of when the behavior occurs, what the behavior is, times of day, anything that they can tell us to describe some of the things that they're seeing. Interviews are structured conversations with the people who know the client best, and there are common tools like the FAST, the QABF, questions about behavioral function, the functional assessment interview. These really help understand in a systematic way the history, frequency, intensity, even possible functions of behavior. We can go ahead and guess or hypothesize what the function might be based on the information that we're given. The key questions are, when did the behavior occur? What happens right before? We're looking for triggers. What happens right after? And what does the person get from it? What does the client gain from this? The rating scales and checklists are another type of indirect assessment that provide standardized ways to gather information. There's a motivation assessment scale, or MASS. There's a PBQ, which is the problem behavior questionnaire. There's also antecedent and consequence breakdowns that can be helpful with analyzing those components as well. They're screening tools. They're not definitive assessment. So although it's an indirect assessment, it is speculation. Record reviews also involve examining existing documentation like IEPs, medical records, previous assessments, incident reports. Those are very beneficial to get an idea of what might influence the behavior and other environmental factors. Some advantages of indirect assessments. They're quick, they're inexpensive, there's kind of some historical context that can be provided. We might not be able to see the behavior before we start working with the client, so this still gives us an idea of what to expect. It's important to note that the main limitation of indirect assessments, they're subject to bias, there can be errors, and it cannot establish a functional relationship alone. Okay, so they're not reliable. They're not an unreliable type. And for the test, that's definitely something you want to remember. Part two is descriptive assessments. These involve direct observation of behavior in the natural setting without manipulating any variables. You're just documenting what's happening naturally to identify patterns and potential functions. ABC, data recording, probably the most common data collection in the FBA process. I've always used it, and it's open-ended. Oftentimes, you have the type where you can just record what you're seeing, the antecedent, the behavior, the consequence, looking for patterns, including the time of day, being as descriptive as possible. And that really can give you a hypothesis for what the function is. The scatterplot analysis is another one. This tracks when the behavior occurs across time periods. So you're being intentional with your intervals and trying to look for those temporal relations. Other descriptive methods include frequency tracking across different conditions, duration recording during specific activities, intensity ratings as well. The key to descriptive assessment, look for consistent patterns in the three-term contingency, what triggers, if there's attention involved, what are the functions that we might be observing as well. Just remember that descriptive assessments can suggest hypotheses about function, but cannot provide functional relationships. So all of the FBA process, we cannot conclude the function because we're not doing an experiment and we're not manipulating anything. We're just observing what's going on. It requires an experimental analysis in order to provide a functional relationship and conclude, which is an FA. That will be next week's topic. So although an FA might be a part of our functional behavior process when we're analyzing it, the FA provides, improves functional relationship. The FBA alone, the indirect and descriptive assessments do not provide functional relationships. That's the key difference there. Part 3, integrating assessment information. It's important after we take all of the information from the FBA, we are looking at multiple sources and trying to develop a testable hypothesis about the function. The triangulation means using multiple assessment methods to confirm finding. If interviews suggest the attentionist function, we can then maybe set up a experiment to develop and prioritize what the function might be. It's not always necessary, but it can be beneficial. Developing a clear hypothesis. So we can say, when presented with difficult academic tasks, John engages in head-hitting behavior to escape the task demand. So we're not saying the function is this, but we're saying we hypothesize that it is, or it's probably this based on what we've seen. We want to prioritize behaviors that impact safety and impact communication. That's the most important. Also, we have to consider frequency and intensity. So if there's one behavior that happens and it's extremely intense, but it's pretty rare, we still might want to target that. There's another behavior that's frequently disruptive or unsafe. That will definitely be a priority to address. We can't address everything at once. We want to start with the most critical behaviors and go from there. We want to consider environmental factors, time of day, setting events, things that happened earlier that might influence current behavior, presence of specific people, activity type, and physical environmental factors like noise or crowding. Looking at these visual examples, we have the Scatterplot Analysis example. Here's the student. The behavior is disruptive calling out, and it's in a third grade classroom. So we have the frequency here, and we've color-coded this based on low to high frequency. Also, it's blank with no occurrences. This pattern analysis helps us look at peak times that the behavior is most likely to occur. The ABC data collection example here, there's a student, Alex, with throwing materials, and then the observer name as well. So we have the time of day, the antecedent, whether there's a task given, whether there's an announcement, and then what the behavior is, what the consequence. So pause here if you want to read more. It's important to look at the observed patterns and then also the functional hypothesis when academic demands are present. That's the most common antecedent, the behavior, and then what the hypothesized function is. Tips here, when reading FBA data, really want to look for consistent antecedent patterns, predictable consequences, time-based and setting-specific occurrences, and functional indicating relationships. Common mistakes. Confusing correlation with causation, remembering that the ABC data, the FBA alone with the descriptive assessments are not causing anything or predicting what's happening in a functional relationship way. Focusing on another common mistake, focusing only on consequences, ignoring setting events, assuming a single function, we know there could be multiple functions, and not considering motivation. FBA is about identifying the function of the behavior, not just describing what happens. So let's ask, what is the behavior doing for the person? We have to know so we can develop an appropriate replacement behavior. Let's do a practice question. Based on the ABC pattern antecedent, teacher asks student to complete math worksheet. Behavior, student throws materials and yells. Consequence, teacher remove worksheet and allows student to do preferred activity. This pattern occurs consistently across multiple observation. What conclusion can be drawn? So pause if you want to read for a minute. The answer is C. The behavior is maintained by negative reinforcement, escape from demands. It looks like here, with the teacher removing the worksheet and allowing the student to move on and do something else that's preferred, throwing is working to escape the task at hand. Okay, so it's not attention because there's no attention being given. It's not automatic reinforcement because there is an intentional or beginning antecedent piece. And it's not punishment because the behavior continues to occur. That wraps up our introduction to FBA topics and to our entire Group C. So we will be talking more about this in weeks to come. Next week, we will dive deeper into functional analysis and preference assessments. Please like and subscribe to get notified for our weekly videos. Also, comment below if you want more examples or have any ideas or any comments to contribute. Thanks for watching. See you next time.